Years ago when I lived in Nashville, I would go to other churches as often as I could. I was a student at the Divinity School, and I had friends and classmates that were becoming pastors and preachers all over. And so I go to church with them when I could. Sometimes I just go to church by myself in some other faith because I was curious. Now, I had been to Spanish Mass several times. I love the Mass. Catholicism is a beautiful high liturgy. It's a little closer to the temple that's our side. Our Catholic side is the temple. Our Protestant side is church. But I'd never been to Spanish Mass. I'd been to Mass, but not La Misa. And so I decided to go find a Spanish congregation in Nashville, and I showed up for the Mass. Now, it was an early Sunday morning, and by the time Mass was over, I had just enough time to run across town to a Spanish sacrament meeting at the Spanish ward in the Nashville stake, where I needed to train some young men's presidents. Or the presidency. So I went and saw their sacrament meeting and stayed afterwards. Now that one was done just in time for me to rush home and attend my own home ward with my family. So again, as a religious nerd, that was a great day to geek out. I got to go to, the first and second were the same culture but different faith, and the second and third were the same faith but different culture. Okay, Spanish Mass, Spanish sacrament meeting, English sacrament meeting. It's awesome. But what blew me away was the transition from first to second. From the Spanish Mass to Spanish sacrament meeting, because Spanish Mass was a well-oiled machine. It's professional clergy. Okay, they know what they're doing. And the sacrament meeting I happened to attend, La Reunión Sacramental, the priest, I think, the teachers forgot the bread that day. So somebody was scrambling to get it there on time. The priest kept messing up the sacrament prayer, and the poor obispo was looking over and shaking his head, no. It was kind of a a comedy of errors. That's a good way to describe it. And I thought, man, if any of those wonderful Latino Católicos came here, they'd wonder, who's running this? This is amateur hour at church. And it was because our church is run by amateurs. And yet, that just might be the secret sauce in the restored Church of Jesus Christ. Because that day, it hit me unlike any other, that God cares more about the pew than the pulpit. He cares more about what happens among the people than among the presidency. And I think that's beautiful. You see, that Sunday, it happened to be fast and testimony meeting. And so people were crossing the line between pew and pulpit repeatedly, coming up to bear their witness of God's hand in their lives, which I only got to hear the priest do when I was at the Mass. It dawned on me, that's what the Lord is trying to accomplish. He wants a kingdom of priests, not just a priest to run the kingdom. He wants people to come up and preach and share and testify, and then go back down and live the gospel. He wants regular old laity like you and me to come up and sit on the stand for a good long time in a bishopric or a branch presidency, in leadership, and then go back down and be a follower again. It's amazing how much shuffling of the deck the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints does, so that we all have opportunities to grow and be developed. That is worth amateur hour. It's worth whatever mistakes we make along the way. I have shared principles from the Doctrine and Covenants earlier this year about some of the challenges of a non-professional ministry. But Section 72, I think, gives us a chance to rejoice in the beauty of having a church that runs exactly that way. As Elder Packer used to say, it's not that we have no clergy, it's that we have no laity. We're all clergy here. It's amazing. With that in mind, look at section 72. And in verse 1, the Lord says, "Hearken and listen to the voice of the Lord, O ye who have assembled yourselves together, who are the high priests of my church, to whom the kingdom and power have been given." Now, this revelation in just a moment is going to focus on bishops, and that is an Aaronic priesthood office. But he starts by addressing high priests, which is a Melchizedek priesthood office. And yet, because those with Melchizedek offices can administer and function in the Aaronic ones, typically it's going to be a high priest who is called to serve as a bishop. Okay? We've had some things earlier in the Doctrine and Covenants to talk about literal descendants of Aaron and rights to the bishopric and so on. That's different, okay? But here what we're seeing is, you high priests, I trust you with my kingdom. You from the pews that I've called up to the pulpit. You might feel a little uncomfortable up here at first. Don't worry. I'm as comfortable as I can be. I have no problem delegating my power and authority to mere mortals because I don't want to leave you as mere mortals. I'm trying to help you grow up and become someone like me. Embrace the growing pains, shall we? Well, he says in verse 2 and 3, "For verily thus saith the Lord, it is expedient in me for a bishop," there's the pivot, "to be appointed unto you," or of you, unto the church, in this part of the Lord's vineyard. I love the correction there. I'm going to appoint one unto you. Well, okay, it's going to be of you, but it's going to be unto the church. You know what I mean. There's this beautiful, the bishop's not just one of us. Yes, he is. Really one of us, out in the pew like everybody else before he's called. But he's called unto us, to serve us, to bless us. This is servant leadership at its finest. The Lord goes on, "Verily in this thing ye have done wisely. For it is required of the Lord at the hand of every steward to render an account of his stewardship, both in time and in eternity." Now, what does that second part have to do with the first? It's a wise thing to have a bishop. In fact, it's more than wise, it's expedient. You got to put one of those leaders in place. Why? Because we're all stewards, and part of stewardship is a return and report on that stewardship. Oh, okay, so this is a revelation about bishops being responsible for their stewardships? Well, yes, in a way, but in reality, they're more responsible for your stewardship. Or I should say, responsible to help you feel the responsibility you ought to feel for whatever stewardship you have. I remember the first bishop I served with, Bishop Hershey, changed my life and the lives of so many of us newlyweds that he led. And I remember serving as his counselor and being taught every week, this is how the church is supposed to run. It felt like he'd memorized the Doctrine Covenants, by the way. He was incredible. But what I found amazing was his ability to help us sense the responsibilities we had and give us opportunities to report on our stewardships. He was the one that taught me that your home teaching will never rise above the level of your home teaching interviews. In other words, if you don't help people feel accountable, they won't feel accountable. In fact, we used to have meetings usually once a year where we'd bring in the presidencies of each auxiliary just to give them a chance to return and report. Get us all up to speed as a bishopric. How are things going? How can we support you better in your callings? Are you sensing the significance of the roles you play in blessing the people you're responsible for? I actually remember one time sitting down with Bishop when it was just the two of us. This wasn't a temple recommend interview. Maybe the other counselor was out of town or something, but I just remember saying to him, I want to do more. And I feel like I've been so busy with other things, I haven't been able to give you as much as I want. And he was so kind and reassuring. You've been doing great. No worries there. No need to apologize. And I was like, I know, but all right, thank you for that. But I see how much you do. I want to do more myself. And what a blessing. So expedient, so wise to have a bishop that can help me sense my accountability. You don't have to shame anyone into changing because you're falling short, but to love and to lead in such a way that people want to render an account or know that they need to and deserve to render an account of their stewardship, both in time and in eternity. Maybe the return and report we get to do with our bishop is a preview of coming moments where our earthly stewardship is preparing us for whatever heavenly stewardships the Lord has in store. Continuing the revelation, the Lord says, this is now verse 5 and 6, "Verily I say unto you, the elders of the church in this part of my vineyard," they're in Kirtland right now, "shall render an account of their stewardship unto the bishop, who shall be appointed of me in this part of my vineyard." We're still talking Kirtland. "These things shall be had on record to be handed over unto the bishop in Zion." And remember, that's Missouri now. That's been clarified. So wait, what's going on? I'm going to talk to I'm in Kirtland, my bishop's in Kirtland. I'm going to talk to my bishop in Kirtland, but he's in communication with the bishop in Missouri? Exactly. There's got to be some way. I mean, if we're going to have local organizations, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is an incredible hybrid, proving contraries, of a top-down hierarchy, prophets and apostles and so on, but a democracy on the ground unlike anything I've ever seen, with so much local leadership provided by local saints, okay? But there's got to be some way for all of these local leaders to coordinate their efforts, since saints seem to move from one congregation to another now and then, right? Well, that's exactly what's being described here. You'll see in our day, when a new member moves into a ward, that means they probably just left a different ward, and the new bishop is supposed to talk to the old bishop to pass so that the baton can be passed. The baton is that family. And here's some things that we were working together on. Here's some things you can be aware of. This is ways that we were trying to be supportive, and you can be supportive too. They're ready for callings. They're amazing people. Put them to work. Or they could use some additional help and support. That institutional memory is so key. And we're starting to see it laid out and developed and organized in this revelation. In fact, if you continue reading section 72, some more duties of bishops are laid out. Things like keeping the Lord's storehouse, providing for the poor, all those kinds of things. How do you report back on stewardships and everything? But then he says this in verse 16 and 17. And now verily I say unto you, that as every elder in this part of the vineyard must give an account of his stewardship unto the bishop in this part of the vineyard, we've seen that already, a certificate from the judge or bishop in this part of the vineyard unto the bishop in Zion rendereth every man acceptable, and answereth all things, for an inheritance, and to be received as a wise steward and a faithful laborer. That's what I see as the initial hint that church membership records would come in handy. In fact, temples have not yet been built, but eventually to have a temple recommend, that would come in handy as well. If for one bishop to be able to communicate with another bishop in the days before phone calls and internet, well, is there some kind of certificate that my bishop in Kirtland can give me so that when I move down to Zion, I can hand that to the bishop in Missouri and all is well? The baton has been passed, and my previous bishop is vouching for me to my new bishop. Membership records are a blessing. Temple recommends are an incredible blessing. And to be able to have those certificates so that wherever we go, I'm visiting a friend's ward, I want to be part of the circle at the baby blessing or the confirmation, and I can show my temple recommend to that bishop, and I can stand in the circle, no questions asked. You understand what I'm saying? One last verse to say on this is verse 19. Because with all of this understanding, we don't want anybody to fall through the cracks. Again, these are precious people being passed, not just some metal baton. He says it this way in verse 19. And now verily I say, let every elder who shall give an account unto the bishop of the church in this part of the vineyard be recommended by the church or churches in which he labors, that he may render himself and his accounts approved in all things. And there I love the word recommended. If that's not a hint to an eventual need for a temple, recommend. I don't know what is. And what does that temple recommend me? It tells whoever is asked to look at it that I have been approved in all things. This is not evidence of my perfection. I'm still far from that. But in terms of me exercising faith and repenting of my sins and striving for continual obedience, as proof of my dedication and determination in my discipleship, to have the signature of my bishop, this revelation is for them. The signature of my stake president, the president of the high priesthood in my stake. That's been hinted at in this revelation as well. And then perhaps most importantly, my own signature. We have in the mouth of 2 and now 3 witnesses that I can be approved. And whatever ward I'm stepping into, whatever temple I'm seeking entrance into, I am approved by the Lord's servants in all things.